Glory to Jesus Christ. I'm Father Thomas J. LOYA, and I want to welcome you to our Oriental Lumen television series called Seeing with Both Eyes. In recent years, iconography, Byzantine iconography, has become a subject of keen interest. Many people are talking about icons. Icons are showing up everywhere. People are learning to paint icons. They're taking icon classes. This is a good thing. However, we have to be careful when we're talking about something like iconography to truly understand it in its fullest context. Because iconography is not like, for instance, taking a ceramics class or a weaving class. Nothing wrong with that. Those are all wonderful things. But iconography is not just a craft. We just don't take a course in iconography. We painted an icon and maybe we think we're an iconographer now. Iconography is a very, very sophisticated art form, but it's so much more than that. So much more. And in fact, to really understand iconography, we have to begin by not talking so much about icons, at least not right away. We have to start from the big picture, way from the outside, and work all the way down to the little pupil painted on the face of an icon. This is necessary to truly understand iconography. We have to look at our faith. Our faith, now by that I mean the Catholic and Orthodox Christian traditions. These are what I would call sacramentally based faiths. And notice I'm avoiding the word religion. I don't like that word religion. See, when you use the word religion, unfortunately today, it kind of puts things almost like at a buffet table, a smorgasbord. Well, you're that kind of religion, I'm this religion, that person's that, and it's basically all the same. There's not a whole lot of difference. But this really underplays what we're talking about here, especially the significance of icons in their fullest context. We are not about a religion. Catholic and Orthodox is not a religion. Try to drop that word from our usage here. What our faith is about is a way of seeing. A way of seeing the invisible God made visible. That invisible, ineffable, incomprehensible, immeasurable, infinite. Notice how we talk more about what God isn't than what He is. He is immeasurable, incomprehensible, infinite, ineffable, invisible. That God becomes visible through the physical. In other words, through the very creation, the order of creation that He Himself put into place. Seeing the invisible God made visible in the order of creation and living according to that vision, that is what our faith is. It's far from just a bunch of teachings or rules. In fact, the Catholic and Orthodox churches, I would say this, for our understanding, do not have teachings. I mean, in a sense they do. We say that. But they don't really have teachings. In other words, these churches do not make up stuff and impose it on people. The Catholic and Orthodox traditions teach. These church teach. The church teaches East and West. It teaches, though, by pointing to what God has done, to how God has revealed himself in his order of creation. And secondly, then, how to live in a way that is honest to that vision. So, our faith is about seeing the invisible God made visible through the physical and living according to that vision. Taking that vision to every aspect of life. Everything. From the human person to marriage, to sexuality, to the environment, to healthcare, to politics, to whatever dimension, every subject and discipline you want to talk about. The difference is made when we take that vision to those disciplines, to every aspect of life. Another word for this vision is several words actually. Mystical. Mystical means the most real. Sometimes we think the mystical means somebody floating above or having stigmatas and they're kind of spooky or different and we're just a bunch of regular Joes just kind of schlepping through life. No. The mystical is the most concrete, the most real. Because mystical means something revealed, something very real. And yet, at the same time, something unknown, something beyond us that we don't fully understand, but we know it's there, it's real. For example, love. Can you put love in my hand? No. Can you put life in my hand? You can put symbols of those things, but you can't put love and life itself in my hand. Yet, they are very real, aren't they? So the things that are most real are to be seen mystically. Another word would be sacramentally. Sacrament means the union, the meeting point of the next life in this life through something physical and through words, like baptism, Eucharist. In fact, Eucharistic is another name for this view. Yet another name for this view, and this is going to be important in our subject of iconography, is liturgical. This is a liturgical vision of life, a liturgical experience of life. Mystical, Eucharistic, sacramental, liturgical, perhaps we can sum it up by saying this is a sacramental liturgical worldview. This is what the Catholic and Orthodox faiths are about. Everything else flows from that. Everything that we know or recall, referred to as teachings or rules or disciplines or whatever, are simply ways of taking that vision into the concrete dimensions of life. And sometimes we need things that sound like rules. But they're really just ways of implementing this vision. Think about the scripture. Let's go to the Bible. In fact, we're going to need our scripture and we're going to need our liturgical prayer books, our text, to talk about and learn about icons in their full context. I'm going to put on what I call my sacramental liturgical glasses. You see that? A little bit different, right? Yeah, we're going to see things sacramentally. Now, we put on our glasses and we open the Bible to the book of Genesis, where God creates things. And what does he say? For instance, let's go to first chapter, verse 6 of Genesis. Then God said, let there be a dome in the middle of the waters to separate one body of water from the other. And so it happened. God made the dome and it separated the water above the dome from the water below it. God called the dome the sky. Evening came, morning followed the second day. Then God said, let the water under the sky be gathered into a single basin, so that the dry land may appear. And so it happened. The water under the sky was gathered into its basin, the dry land appeared. God called the dry land the earth, and the basin of the water he called the sea. God saw how good it was. And notice the scripture will repeat that every time God created something. He saw how good it was. Now, English language is very handy in this regard. Take out one O from the word good. What do you have? You got it. God. Something is good because it participates in, reflects God. God saw that this, what he created, revealed him, participated in him. That's why it was good. Not just because he called it good. He called it good because he could see himself in it. It revealed him. In the Garden of Eden, we read further on in Genesis. It talked about how the man saw the woman, how the woman saw the man. When they looked at each other, they were naked, yet they felt no shame. And again, when they sinned, once again, they looked at each other. This time they were ashamed, so they covered themselves. It was all about the vision. Our faith is about seeing as God sees, because God created us to see that way and to live according to that vision. It's a sacramental, liturgical vision. And we apply that to everything, and it makes all the difference in the world. That's the only way to see. That's the only way to see life. And it is this vision that we will see. Iconography will help us to see. The second thing about iconography and about our faith is that this is a way of seeing, which is the title of this series, with both eyes. Actually, it's a little pun intended. I words, incarnationally and integratedly, seeing with both eyes. Incarnationally means that God has entered into the very creation that he brought into existence. Remember, everything was invisible before. Now all becomes visible. For whatever reason, God decided to create matter, physical stuff. And he entered into his own creation. As the fathers of the church say, the creator became the creature while remaining the creator. This is the great mystery, the mystery of the incarnation. Incarnation means to incarnate in flesh, to enter into the physical, the visceral. God did that in the greatest act of love that we can ever imagine. We really can't even imagine it. Again, it's a mystery. We know something about it, yet it remains beyond us. The second I word is integrated. When we see things in this incarnational way, the sacral liturgical way, we see everything this way, and so everything is integrated. In other words, we see everything this way. We never look at anything as separate from God. We never lose our God consciousness, no matter what it is we're looking at or experiencing. And integration is, in particular, a mark of our faith and of the church. Iconography is an art form that's integrated with our faith, our belief, with the scriptures, with all the principles of beauty, with nature, with creation, and with liturgy, the art, the architecture, the gesture, the prayer, everything. Think of all things I just named. Faith, creation, architecture, art, liturgy. I'll throw in chant too. Gesture. All of that together is the context for iconography. Our faith and iconography itself is an integrated reality. An integrated reality that stems from this incarnational reality. So we see with both eyes. The third thing about iconography is that painting an icon, creating an icon, some may call it writing an icon, but that's sometimes disputed, if that really is exactly the correct term. A subject for another time. But creating an icon is also part of a lifestyle. Icons, again, are set in the context of our faith. Therefore, a person painting them has to be a person who is of that faith, who lives it, who practices it. You see, iconography developed in the monastic traditions, by and large. And it became part of their spirituality, part of the monastic discipline. In other words, icons, in their creation especially, are not only instruments of prayer, but they are a process of praying. That's why there's a specific process into how to paint them, how to create them, and also how to live a life that's consistent with their vision. Icons bring us into that right vision, that incarnational, integrated, sacramental, Eucharistic, mystical, liturgical vision. And so a person painting icons has to live in a way that's integrated with that, consistent with that. Icons are not just art. They're not just something you take a couple classes in and you're painting icons. Icons actually incorporate and integrate, there's those words again, they integrate actually all of the principles of art, which means to truly be an iconographer, you have to have artistic ability and artistic training. It's an art form. And the art form, just like for instance with music, with chant, you can't be a church musician. You can't be in the choir. You can't be a cantor, a choir director, unless you have sufficient musical ability. The art form, music and art itself, paint on a board or a wall, is a vehicle to communicate something. So there's a certain integrity that has to be adhered to in the art form itself. So iconography is a very sophisticated art form because it incorporates all the principles and dimensions of art. But more so, it communicates and immerses us into a great mystery, the reality of life, the truth about our faith. So it's very comprehensive. It's a very, very, very serious business, this iconography. So to understand it, you have to understand it in its context, which means you need liturgy, scripture, art, architecture. You need the eye of the contemplative, the eye of the mystic, a sense of creation, of piety, a sense of prayer, and a sense of asceticism. Asceticism, of course, means that discipline of saying no to self, to the fallen sides of our passion, of fasting, particularly, and praying, a life of fasting and prayer in varying degrees. Because remember, that is then the monastic disciplines. And iconography essentially grew up in the monastic discipline. So the icon is set in the vision of life, ushers in the vision of life, number one. Number two, it is an art form. Number three, it has to do with a lifestyle. These are the three principles we're going to need to keep in mind as we go through this series, Seeing with Both Eyes. Now, as an art form, iconography incorporates and is based in, as an art form, all of the principles or secrets of beauty. See, iconography unlocks our faith. It unlocks that vision. But it also unlocks the principles of beauty that God has woven into His creation. This is why creation is beautiful, because God has woven into it certain principles. And over time, especially starting with the ancients, the ancient Greeks and the Romans, actually were among the first to discover over time these secrets or principles of beauty, having to do with proportion, having to do with color, dimensions, contrast. And when Christianity developed with Christ, the coming of Christ, what the Christians did was they learned from that. They took what the ancients discovered about their principles of beauty, and they used those things and incorporated them into iconography. Because they knew that the ancients, although they didn't know the true God, the ancients nonetheless had stumbled upon, had discovered those principles of beauty that God wove into creation. Why? Because God is true, good, and beautiful. And so He put beauty in creation for us to discover and to use so that we could imitate God and we could co-create with him. We could create beauty also. Why? To make manifest his presence on earth through beauty. So icons uncover and incorporate the fundamental principles of beauty that God has woven into creation. Vision of life, an incarnational, integrated vision of life, an art form, very sophisticated and comprehensive, very integrated, revealing beauty, and thirdly, being a lifestyle. Now notice we haven't even really looked at an icon yet. And this was necessary because you need to approach it correctly to understand what it really is, what icons really are, the why behind them, the real why behind them, and how to truly create an icon in the right way, but above all, to live according to that vision that icons immerse us in. So for this series, Seeing with Both Eyes, what we're going to need is, first of all, the eye, the heart, the soul of a contemplative, a monastic. We want to open our eyes, our heart, our mind, and soul to beauty, to seeing beauty everywhere, and to connecting what we see with God, allowing it prayer, allowing that vision to have prayer well up into us. So our response is one of prayer, especially of praise and glory and thanksgiving. The next thing we're going to need is we're going to need our scriptures. And we're going to need the liturgical text, especially of the Byzantine Church, the Eastern churches, because it is in the liturgy that we will find a great part of the context of iconography. And finally, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at icons themselves to see how exactly they usher in for us this vision of life, how they are incarnational and integrated, how they are as a great art form, how they communicate beauty, and how the vision that they immerse us in, how that is absolutely relevant to us today. Icons are an ancient art form, but that doesn't mean they're old-fashioned or something from antiquity that we sort of dust off and it becomes a fad. Icons are timeless. They're good for all time. And that's why they've been around for all time. Because they bring to us, they immerse us in that one and only adequate vision of life, which has been around since time immemorial. Glory to Jesus Christ.